Hi everyone! Today I have a fun little Sanrio themed crochet video for you guys, which I'm really excited to share with you because one, I haven't done a tutorial video in a very long time, and two, I really enjoy how the pieces came out. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. The first piece we'll be making is this My Melody Drawstring Bag. There's a lot of tiny details on the bag, but it's incredibly easy and fun to make. For row 1, the first thing you're going to do is chain 32 with your pink yarn. After chaining 32, double crochet 3 times into the third chain, counting from the chain on your hook. After, double crochet down the chain normally until you reach the last stitch. Once you reach the last stitch, you're going to double crochet 6 times into the last chain. Doing this will make the project round on the side so you can easily work on the opposite side. You're now going to double crochet all the way down the section of the chain, going into these little loops here until you reach the last stitch. At the last stitch, double crochet 3 times into it. Then slip stitch into the first stitch and chain 2. For row 2, before we get started, we're going to take our stitch markers and mark a couple stitches. The first stitch we're going to mark is the third stitch from the chain on the left and the right. Then on the other end of the project, you're going to look for the large gap here where we did the 6 double crochets on the last row. You'll then mark the third stitch from this gap on both sides. It should look like this. Now that everything is marked, increase into the first 3 stitches, which is just 2 double crochets into each. You can remove the stitch marker for good afterwards. Then double crochet down the row normally until you reach the next stitch marker. Once you reach the stitch marker, remove it and then increase into every stitch until you reach the next stitch marker. Once you reach the stitch marker, make sure to increase into that stitch and then remove the stitch marker for good. Then continue to work double crochets down until the last stitch marker. Once you reach the last marker, increase into the last 3 stitches. Then slip stitch into the first stitch. For row 3, we're now going to start the body of the bag. First, switch to your white yarn by slipping the yarn into the slip stitch and then chain 1. For the body, we'll be doing the lemon peel stitch. To do this, all you're going to do is single crochet into the first stitch of the row. Then for the second stitch, you're going to double crochet. It's also a good idea to weave in your ends as you go so you won't have to do it later. So I just work a single crochet under the yarn ends like this, and then finish it over, which traps the yarn ends inside. I do the same with the next stitch, which is a double crochet. You're going to repeat working 1 single crochet and then 1 double crochet into the end of the row. At the end of the row, slip stitch into the first stitch of the row and chain 2. For row 4, you're going to switch the order of the stitches. So for row 3, you started with a single crochet, but instead for row 4, you're going to start with a double crochet. Then work a single crochet. And then repeat the pattern of 1 double crochet and 1 single crochet until the end of the row. At the end of the row, slip stitch into the first stitch and chain 2. For the rest of the body of the bag, you're going to alternate between these 2 stitches. For every even row, you're going to start with a double crochet, and for every odd row, you're going to start with a single crochet. You're going to do this for a total of 25 rows. At the end of row 25, work single crochets into every stitch of the row. At the end of the single crochet row, slip stitch into the first stitch, chain 1, cut your yarn, and pull to secure. Then turn the bag inside out, and then the body of your bag is now complete. For the bag flap, you're going to add stitch markers into both sides of the bag like this. Then you're going to count 10 stitches up from those stitch markers and then add stitch markers to those stitches. You can then remove the side stitch markers. The ones remaining indicates where the flap will be. Turn your bag around and insert your hook into the first stitch marker stitch. Attach your pink yarn and work the lemon peel stitch down starting with a single crochet. And then after, do a double crochet. Repeat 1 single crochet and then 1 double crochet down until the end of the row. The last stitch should end with a single crochet. After, chain 1 and turn your work. You want to make sure you always start with a double crochet if you end with a single crochet. The double crochets should always stack on top of the single crochets for the lemon peel stitch. So here I started with a double crochet and then went back and forth between a double and a single crochet. Do this for 12 rows. At the end of the 12th row, chain 1, cut the yarn, and pull to secure. For the drawstring, chain 140. Then take a tapestry needle and work it in and out of the top of the bag, making sure both of the tails are in the front. Then you can pull it and tie it in a bow to see how it'll look. You can adjust the look to your desire in case the flap is getting pulled too much. To do my Melody's face, I recommend using this free oval pattern, which is linked in the description box. It goes into heavy detail on how to crochet an oval, better than I could explain honestly. After you've created your oval, take a tapestry needle and black or brown yarn and go in and out on one side of the face to add Melody's eyes. Do the same for the other side and then with yellow for the nose. I went in for about 6 to 8 times for the eyes and twice for the nose. After, take the face and place it on the flap where you want it and use the long tail to sew it onto the flap. Once you're done, cut off a tail and then the face is complete. To do the ears, take the pink yarn and create a magic circle. Then single crochet 6 into the magic circle. After, close the gap and add a stitch marker to the last stitch. Then add 1 increase into each stitch, including the stitch marker stitch. For the third row, single crochet 1 into the stitch, add your stitch marker to that first stitch, and then increase into the second stitch. For this row, you're going to repeat this pattern working 1 regular single crochet for 1 stitch and then an increase into the next until the end of the row. For row 4 to 16, work 1 regular single crochet into each stitch. After, turn the ear inside out and then begin your decrease rows. First, work 1 single crochet into the first stitch and add your stitch marker back. To decrease, insert your hook into the front loop of the first stitch and then the front loop of the second stitch. Then yarn over and pull through, then yarn over and pull through again. You're going to repeat this until the end of the row. For the last row, decrease into every stitch. After, chain 1, cut a long tail and pull to secure. Take your tapestry needle and sew into each stitch with the long tail. Then you're going to sew the ear onto one side of the flap. So figure out where and how you want the ear to lay, then just sew it in and out with the long tail. Once that ear is attached, repeat the same steps for the second ear. My Melody tends to wear either a flower or a bow, and for this bag I preferred to do the bow. To do the bow, first take your blue yarn and chain 8. Then work half double crochets down the chain. At the end of the row, chain 2 and turn your work. You're going to work half double crochet rows for a total of 13 rows. On row 14, work slip stitches down the row. At the end of the row, continue working slip stitches on the next side, gradually working all the way around the rectangle. Once you reach the first slip stitch into it, chain 1, cut a really long tail and pull to secure. With your tapestry needle, take the tail and weave it in and out of the slip stitches until it reaches the middle of the rectangle. Then you're going to just wrap the tail around the rectangle as much as you can. Once it's wrapped, adjust the bows to your desire and then sew the tail into the top of My Melody's head in and out until it's secure. For the bag straps, first chain 80. Then work half double crochets down until the end of the row. At the end of the row, chain 2 and turn your work. You're going to work half double crochets for a total of 3 rows. On the last row, chain 1, cut the yarn, and pull to secure. Repeat this for a second strap. You're also going to repeat this for a little bag hook as well, but instead of chaining 80, chain 15 and only do 1 row of half double crochet. To attach the straps, first take the strap and place it onto the back of the flap. You want to flip the strap so that you're sewing it onto the bag in a way where the seam doesn't show. Use your tapestry needle and sew it in and out with the tail from the strap. Sew around 2 times to make it extra secure. Then on the bottom of the strap, place it on the base of the bag. Then turn the bag and the strap and sew it the same way so that the seam doesn't show. Once the first strap is attached, do the same for the second. To attach the bag hook, do the same steps as the straps by sewing it onto the opposite side like this, and then when it's turned, the seam won't show. I did this at the top of the bag flap. The bag is now complete, but if you want, you can spice it up a bit. I took this yarn and created ruffles on the straps by attaching the yarn and worked 4 half double crochets into the first stitch. For the second stitch, I slip stitched into it, and then for the rest of the strap, I repeated working 4 half double crochets into one stitch, and then a slip stitch into the next. I ended up deciding to add a button to keep the flap closed, so I ended up adding another row to the bottom of the flap, and once I reached the middle, I skipped 2 stitches to create a buttonhole. I then finished the roll and then pulled the flap down to choose where I wanted the button to be. I then used some scrap yarn to sew the button to where I wanted it to be. And then the bag was officially complete. The next piece we'll be making is a Kuromi rug. I'm warning you though, this takes a lot of work and time, but if you space it out and maybe work on it in your free time, you'll eventually finish it and love how it turns out. It's incredibly easy to make, just very time consuming. For the Kuromi rug, first chain 4. Then slip stitch into the first stitch of the chain. After, chain 2. In the middle of the gap of the chain, you're going to add 2 double crochets. After, chain 2. Then add 3 more double crochets into that same gap. You're going to repeat this 2 more times, chaining 2, and then adding 3 double crochets into the gap. At the end, you should have 4 sections of 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and slip stitch into the first stitch of the row. To start the second row, first slip stitch into each stitch until you reach a chain gap. Then slip stitch into the gap and chain 2. For the second row, you're going to first double crochet 2 stitches into the gap. After, chain 2, then add 3 more double crochets into that same gap. After, add 3 double crochets into the next gap without adding a chain. After the 3 double crochets, chain 2 and add 3 more double crochets into that same gap. You're going to repeat this for the last 2 gaps, doing 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets all in the same gap. Once all 4 gaps are done, slip stitch into the first stitch of the row. Chain 1, cut the yarn, and pull to secure. That's 1 granny square. For this project, I'm sorry to say this, but you'll need 643 granny squares, 477 black squares, 133 white squares, and 32 pink squares. Once you have all your squares, line them up according to this graph that's also linked in the description box. I didn't have enough room to place all the squares out before slip stitching, so I just decided to slip stitch each row after placing them on the floor. Once the squares are in the appropriate place, you're going to begin slip stitching them together. The way I do it is first slip stitching them horizontally, connecting each square together row by row using the same color as both of the squares. So I take 2 squares, line them up evenly, and attach my yarn into both of them, and then slip stitch down until they're both connected. Then do the same for the next square in the row. If there are squares that are different colors, I use whatever color that matches the previous square. Once they're all slip stitched together, I began to slip stitch the rows together. I started with the black, but will switch colors if the white or pink sections begin to dominate. Once all the squares are slip stitched together, weave in all your ends, and once that's done, the rug is complete. Here is what Kuromi came out to look like. This rug is so huge that if you don't want it to be a rug, you could also make it like a blanket, and maybe keep this part can be over your shoulders, or even just using this part as the blanket because it's so big that it'll cover your whole body, I promise you. This came out really cute though. If you can tell, I know I said you have to weave in all your ends, but on the back side I just didn't do that because it just takes forever. So wherever I put it, I'm just gonna tuck it in for now, and gradually, if I have nothing else to do, I'll go ahead and weave in the ends. But for the most part, I'm really happy with how it came out. This project was incredibly tedious and long, and I told myself I'm never going to do this ever again, but I might if I find a graph that I really like and I'd like to keep it in a house as a rug or something. Or even if you want to if it's small enough or big enough to put on the wall or something, that would be cool to have something like this up there. But this will not fit on any wall here. You have to find a graph that's small enough to where you can put it on a big wall or something like that. But yeah, this is how it came out. The last piece we'll be making is a Cinnamaroll mirror keychain, which can go with your duffel bag or any other item you'd prefer it to be on. To start the mirror cover, first create a magic circle. After, you're going to work 6 single crochets into the middle of the circle. After the 6 single crochets, pull the tail in the back to close the gap in the middle. For the first row, you're going to add 2 single crochets into each stitch. First, add 1 single crochet into the first stitch. Then add a stitch marker to know where the row begins. Then add your second single crochet into the same stitch. After, work 2 single crochets into every stitch until the end of the row. For row 2, you'll work 1 single crochet into the first stitch, add your stitch marker into that stitch, then in the second stitch, add 2 single crochets. You're going to repeat working 1 regular single crochet and then 2 single crochets until the end of the row. For the third row, you're going to add 1 regular single crochet into the first stitch, add your stitch marker back, then add 1 single crochet into the next stitch. On the third stitch, add 2 single crochets. Then repeat this pattern until the end of the row. Here's the full pattern of increases to follow. On row 7, add your mirror onto the project to make sure the rows you did just slightly go over its size. Then single crochet down the row until the 5th stitch. You're not going to decrease. To do this, insert your hook into the 5th stitch, yarn over, and pull through. Then insert your hook into the 6th stitch, yarn over, and pull through again. You should have 3 loops on your hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops, and that's a decrease. You're going to do this into every 5th stitch. On row 8, work single crochets down until the 4th stitch. Then add a decrease which works into the 4th and 5th stitch. Repeat this for the rest of the row. On row 9, you're going to do 1 slip stitch into every stitch until the end of the row. Then insert you're going to do this into every 5th stitch. Chain 1, cut your yarn, and pull to secure. For the ears, create a magic circle and single crochet 6 stitches into the middle of the circle. Once you have those 6 single crochets, close the gap in the middle and work 2 single crochets into each stitch, making sure to mark the first stitch with a stitch marker. After that row, you're going to work 1 single crochet into every stitch until you finish row 9. Once row 9 is complete, chain 1, cut a long tail of yarn, and pull to secure. Take your tapestry needle and sew into the top of both stitches to close the ear on top. You're then going to use the same tail to sew the ear onto the side of the mirror. Then weave in all the tails by going into one part of the mirror and then out the other. After, cut those ends off, and all the mirror needs now is the face details. For the face details, I used my tapestry needle and some blue yarn, and first inserted the tapestry needle into the spot I'd want the eyes to be and pulled it out where I wanted the eyes to stop. I then just repeated this until the eye was as bulky as I preferred. I did the same with some pink yarn for the blush on the face. For extra decor, I created 2 bows with a chain of 30 and then tied it onto the ears. I also tied the ends of the bows underneath the ears to keep them stable. For the keychain, I took these jump rings and first connected a couple of them, then used some pliers to make sure the gaps in them were closed. I then attached my keychain hook and attached one of the jump rings onto the mirror. And then the mirror keychain was complete.